To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move out.
Hi there, welcome to another edition of Uncle Rico's Garage. I'm Richard, aka Uncle Rico here. Got a few things to talk about today, and then I'm going to tear down a set of conventional forks, show you what to look for, how to do it. You know, it'll be finally an instructional video, right? But let me get you caught up to speed on what's been going on here. So I'm going to flip the camera around. Hang on just a second here. As you can see by the tubs that have taken up my model building space, I've got my KX80 parts. Here's some more parts down here. Got my KX80 ready to go to the powder coater. So here's the hub, front and back hubs. I've got the triple clamps in there. I've got the strut parts. I am going to talk to them about doing the fork legs. If they can do a nice sort of a, you know, just a aluminum color, I think I'll go ahead and have them powder coated. Down here's my swing arm. Here's the stock rims that I just took apart, and here's the, well, there's the old tires that came off, and there's the frame all ready to go. I did end up taking the bearing races out. I'll have them mask that area off, and then you know, we'll get the whole thing coated up, and then I can put those bearing races back in. But that's all ready to go. So I think today's actually Saturday. Come Monday, I'll run that stuff by my favorite powder coaters and get that going. So the other thing I did, of course, taking the wheels apart. I had to measure the offset of the wheel and also mark the spokes, inner and outer fronts, inner and outer rears, so that my good friends over at W, right? W. I guess I think in my head it sounds like I'm saying W, but W, right? The good people, John and Kristen out there, they're going to build me up some wheels. I don't want my rims to look like the new, you know, that new kind of gold that you see that's more yellow than gold. I want the wheels, and it's not going to be these wheels. It'll be brand new hoops, but they're bare aluminum, and then they can be anodized, you know, in sort of the old-fashioned anodized way. Not that real bright, yellowy gold. I don't want that. It's got to be that deeper, richer, old-fashioned gold. So anyway, we're going to get that going. Here's the other thing I wanted to show you guys. The new addition, oops, excuse me here. New addition to the shop. I guess I could say, oops, I did it again. Just when I've told my wife, nope, no more bikes, no more bikes. Well, I had to. I just had to. This is an 84 CR125, just like I had back in the day. Here's a few pictures on my original 84. And so, yeah, I couldn't, you know, I couldn't pass it up. The The price was right. In a way, it was helping somebody out purchasing the bike. Now I know, let's see here. Hopefully it doesn't get too dark in here. You'll still be able to see some of this, what I'm talking about. You know, there is known issues with the water pumps. The whole cooling system sort of rotting out because of the materials that the cases were made out of. I haven't checked into it yet. Okay, that's a gamble I took with this one, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's got a DG pipe on it, which is a little dented up. It's got some dents. I'll see if I can pull those out. I'm going to take all this black paint off of here anyway. I'm going to go with the bare metal look. Back in the day, on my original 125, I had a Pro Circuit pipe on there, which eliminated the ATAC system. If you're familiar with that, this DG pipe also eliminates that. Most of the pipes back then, they did eliminate that just because, you know, the ATAC didn't make that big of a difference. Excuse me, that, you know, the pipe manufacturers just worked around it. So, I need a wheel spacer for the back wheel, which I've got on its way. The rear shock needs to be rebuilt. And you can see it's not mounted quite correctly there. I'll get that all fixed up. And I'll also do a video on rebuilding the shock. Okay, the forks. Let me get on through here. The forks also need a rebuild. And that's what I'm going to show you here in just a moment. Okay, I'm going to get the bike set up on a stand, and we'll start taking things apart. I've got a lot of parts that I got in the other day. You know, I like to see stock bolts in things. Okay, a lot of this bolts are missing, you know, or it's not the correct bolt or whatever. So I ordered up all the correct bolts, the correct levers. I'm going to get some different bars for this bike. I don't like these bars. The proper kill switch, stop button, I should say. It's not a kill switch, it's a stop button, okay? Honda doesn't like to use that word kill, so they're known as stop switches. The brake master cylinder on this bike, I do not believe is correct. I think originally the stock bike, the brake line came straight out. It didn't have this little drop down and then out. It like would have come straight out of here. So I'm going to see if I can find a proper master cylinder. This brake works. You know, I can use that master cylinder, but I like things to be stock, right? This front number plate looks like the stock front number plate, but somebody's cut off the cable keeper. Why they did that, I don't know. It's you know, you go full compression on your forks, and then your brake hose ends up behind the plate, and that's not very good. So there are aftermarket, I think UFO makes a plate that still has that cable keeper on there. So I'll get one of those. I've actually found that you can still get the stock front fender. What's nice about this bike is all the plastic is stock. There's no aftermarket plastic on this bike. It's all stock. It's a little rough. Some of it's a little rough. It's gotten sun faded. Needs to be cleaned up. But if I can get a stock front fender for this bike, I think I'm going to do it. They're only about $50, so I think I'm going to do it. So anyway, let me get the bike put up on a stand, and we'll get to work here. Hold on just a second. Okay, so here we go. Got the bike up on the stand, some things cleared out of the way. You can see these are aftermarket fork boots on here, which I'm probably just going to get rid of. They're a little bit sunbaked and whatnot. The original 84 came with black fork boots. I don't know if I'm going to run fork boots at all. There was a time on my original 84 that I just took the fork boots off, so I might do that. Few things to notice right off the top here. Number one, see how that's sticking out like that? That shouldn't be that way. So either the axle isn't screwed in all the way, or this fork is pinched inwards. Okay, so it's like binding, which is not good. But it looks to me like it's just the axle. Oh, and look at that. I just realized there's a spacer missing here. Okay, so I'm going to have to look for that. That's okay. The brake caliper is held on with incorrect bolts. We'll get that fixed up as well. Yeah, okay, well that's all right. You know, this is a project. I knew it'd be a project. We're just finding things as we go along, and that's fine. So, very good. There's a few other things I noticed over here. As you can tell, these are not the proper foot peg bracket pivots. Okay, this big old bolt, that's gonna get fixed. The shifter, I don't believe, is stock. It's got a piece of, fuel hose here as the rubber. That's gonna get taken care of. I don't like these ugly hose clamps holding the carburetor in place. I'm gonna see if I can find some stock clamps for that. Something got run into the side panel right there. That's okay. That's not that big of a deal. And then, like I said, there is a wheel spacer missing here on the back wheel too, but I've got that one coming. So, yeah, I just need to get that front one now. I didn't realize that, but one of those things. Emotions took over, and I wanted the bike. I've been wanting one of these for, well, probably since I got rid of my original 84, which was about 1986 or 87 when I sold it, and fortunately I kind of had to give it away. It's kind of sad. Here you can see some of the other bolts that aren't correct. I've got all the proper bolts and washers for that. I don't like this Allen head nonsense here. We're gonna fix all that up. So, okay, let's get down to it though. Let me get set up and we'll start taking the forks off here. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do, and you're probably asking yourself, Richard, why are you down on your knees working on this bike when you've got a motorcycle lift over there that you could use? And that's true, but I got my 250 project sitting on the lift right now, and I just didn't feel like moving it, and this is no big deal. It'll only take a moment. So anyway, what I like to do, and a lot of people don't do it this way, and it kind of confuses me, I like to take the brake caliper off, okay, before I take the fork out. The reason for that is once you put the wheel back on, and I'll show you during reassembly, once you put that wheel back on, it's much easier to put the wheel on, put the axle in, and then put the caliper on. instead of trying to fight that wheel and wiggle it into place to get that disc in between the brake pads. So yeah, it's easier. It's 2 bolts. It only takes you another couple seconds to undo it all. It's just the easiest way to do it. Okay. So now, like I said, these are not stock bolts. Normally these would be 12 millimeter. It would take a 12 millimeter socket to get these off. Because these are not stock, I'm having to use a 13 millimeter. Okay. And fortunately, it feels like they're coming right out, no problem. So there's not like any goofy Loctite, or it's not, you know, strip threaded into the caliper carrier plate, which is a good thing. You know, these are probably good quality metric bolts, but they're not correct. I'm going to switch them back to the correct bolts. So just one more thing to add on to my list here as we go along. Okay, so we'll take those out. Now, funny thing is, one had a washer and the other one didn't. That's kind of weird. Pull that caliper aside. You know, probably is going to need some brake pads too while we're at it, but that's okay. No big deal. I can also see up here, they don't have the stock bolts here in the cable keeper. I'll replace those too. I don't like to see that cheapy, you know, Ace Hardware nuts and bolts where you can still get the stock nut and bolt, you know. Put the stock back in. That's the best way to do it. So now we'll flip around to the other side. Let me switch out to my 10 millimeter. Okay, and we're just going to loosen these. You got the 4 bolts here. Somebody put nylocks on here. That's okay. I'd rather have the stock, and I'll probably switch it to stock, but you know, at least the studs aren't broken. That's usually what you find on these forks, is that somebody's over torqued it and they break one of those studs off out of the fork leg. All right, so at this point now we can take the axle out. Okay, that's a 17 millimeter socket. Hopefully the axle isn't bent. That sometimes happens with these guys. Seems to be okay. Getting a good shot of my bald spot probably right now. That's all right. Okay. There we go. I'm going to put the axle back through there. We'll set that front wheel aside. All right. Now let me reset the camera, okay, and we'll pull that fork leg out of the clamp. Okay, switching to the 12 millimeter socket, we're going to go ahead and loosen the clamp bolts. Doesn't matter at this point if you loosen the top or the bottom first. These are torqued a little bit high. You know, 18 to probably 20 foot-pounds of torque is all that you need on these. The top ones were a little loose, the bottom ones were a little tight. Okay. Make sure that those are loosened up sufficiently. And now, with any luck, they should just slide right out of here. Sometimes they don't. There we go. They've just been in here for a while, so a little twist action gets the fork leg right out, okay? Let's go over to the bench. Okay, I'm hoping right now that you can see me. We've got our fork leg out. We've got our fork boot off of the fork leg. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and loosen the clamp. Okay, we want to do is go ahead and open up the top cap. Okay, and we'll get our spring out of there and drain some of the oil. Now we will attempt to do this just by hand. Hopefully that's not too tight, and it's not. We got a good one here. Okay. Now you always have to be careful because there might be some preload on this spring. You never know. This doesn't seem to be too bad. Well, just a little bit. Okay, not too bad. Let's lay down some paper towel for our parts. Okay, so we have our top cap. Then normally you find a spacer, okay? Just a piece of tin here. Spaces it down to the spring. Let's slowly lower this tube, the inner tube. Then we have our spacer seat, which was actually upside down on here. Okay, if you can see, let me do a little trick here. You can see our spacer has a little edge to it, right? A little cupped edge. We want that to be down into the spring. Okay, so the spacer should sit on the flat side. And then this guy here, okay, I hope you can see that. That locates the spring. So we want that facing down towards the spring. It was in backwards, not that big of a deal. All right, so we're going to pull the spring out. Way back here now. I'm going to go ahead and pull the spring out. Probably a little bit of oil is going to come with it. Yep, the oil actually looks pretty good, so maybe these forks weren't serviced that long ago. Okay, but we're going to throw that into the wash tub here real quick and see if we can do it without making too much of a mess. Okay, now it's just a matter of holding that fork upside down and dumping the oil. Now, while the oil's dumping, go ahead and work the fork through its travel. That'll help squeegee off any oil that's hanging out around the damper rod. Yeah, we're getting down to the darker stuff here. I think all the sediment had settled in these forks. Okay, and we'll probably go ahead and speed this part of the video up. You get the idea. So let's fast forward here through this. Okay, that takes care of the majority of it. Now, by the way, these little containers that I use as drain pans, you can get these from like Walmart for $1 a piece. The unfortunate thing is you have to get the lid to go with it. And sure, yeah, you might sometimes need the lid, but not always. So I use them to put parts in. I use them, you know, for draining oil. They come in handy, that's for sure. So now, soft jaws. Remember soft jaws on our vise. We're going to go ahead and put our axle clamp in there, give it a good snug. All right. Now, down on the bottom here, this fork actually still has the original dust cover for the compression adjuster. The compression adjuster that really didn't do anything. But it's good to know that, you know, hey, that part's still there. Usually people pull these off and they lose them in the dirt and, you know, they're gone, right? Okay, we have a bolt here. Make sure we clear away any dirt that we can out of there. Okay, so we have an Allen head bolt. Let me see if you can, if the camera will catch that. Okay, an Allen head bolt there. So we make sure that we have the correct sized Allen socket to fit. Nope, one more. Okay, it's actually 10 millimeter in the 84 125 Honda fork, and probably the same for the 250 as well. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can just zap that bolt out of there. If not, then there's a few other tricks that we have to try. Okay, but it's always best to just try the simplest way first. So we'll give it a good shot here and see. Nope, she doesn't want to budge. So let's go ahead and see if we can put a little more torque to it. And get it to loosen up. There we go. Now at this point I'm not really unscrewing it, I'm just kind of getting it loose. Okay. We'll go ahead and see if we can hit it with the air gun again here. Nope, it wants to, but not quite getting it. So, next step, let's try and warm it up. Let's put some heat to it. There's a good possibility that somebody red Loctited that bottom bolt in, and there's a good possibility it just rusted in. But in either case, putting some heat to it will help. Okay, so propane or MAP gas, don't get out your acetylene torch. That's too much heat. You'll melt the tube. Okay, the propane gets pretty hot, but it won't get to the melting point. At least not of aluminum. Now remember too, if you can see this flame, I hope it shows up on the video. You don't want to put your flame like this. That's not helping. Okay? The hottest part of your flame, see how it's light blue here? And then it gets to a dark blue before it kind of disappears out of the visual spectrum? The hottest part of your flame is right here. It's not right here. It's here. Okay, because it has to mix with the oxygen to get hot. So don't bury your flame like this. It's not doing any good. You know, that's why when you have a gas stove, right, your frying pan doesn't sit right here on your gas stove. It sits up here above the flame because it's hotter there. And it doesn't have to be red hot. We're just trying to warm it up. Kind of work your way around. Okay, let's give that a shot. Let's see if that's made any difference. I'll go ahead and just try and work it by hand again. That has helped, but let's see. Hit it with the air. It's turning it. I think I got to get my compressor loaded up a little bit more. Hang on just a second. All right, compressor's loaded up again. Give it another shot here and see. Oh, there we go. That did it. Now we got it. So, make sure you put your drain pan underneath the end there. Now, at this point, what you want to do is pull outwards on the inner tube. Okay, put some tension against that. That'll help lock the damper rod in place while you pull the bottom bolt out. See, it's loose. There's oil coming out of there. One more trick we can do here. Okay? Get yourself a broom handle. Just a regular broom handle. Put the wooden end down inside the fork. What this will do is, here, I'll use this as an example. Here's the damper rod out of my KX, okay? You can see the top there. Now this one is smooth, unfortunately. A lot of times what the manufacturers will do is cast that so it has like a 6 or 12 point, like, so you can put a, let's say you could put a nut down inside there, right? And that'll hold the damper rod so that you can unscrew the bolt out of the bottom. Well, in this case, what we're going to just use is the end of our broomstick. So it'll come into the chrome tube and hit the top of that damper rod and help hold it in place while we get the bolt out of the bottom. So let's give that a try here. Seat that guy down in there. Press on that good and hard. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, it seems as though there's a thread or two that is causing that thing to stick. I'm going to go ahead and we'll turn this fork leg upright. Let's start working on getting the seal out of the top. So what we want now is just something that you can use as a small pick. Let me get my glasses here so I can see what I'm doing. Now this particular fork just has a small wire clip that sits on top of the dust seal, with the fork seal being underneath that. And there's a lot of dirt and whatnot, but you'll see that the ring, the circlip, here it goes. There we go. Okay, the circlip here All right, if you can see that. It's got these little curves to it, and that's where you want to put your pick, or I used a smaller flat blade screwdriver. Try and work from the ends here, get your screwdriver into there, pop that out, and then work your way around until the whole thing comes out. Okay, we want to do that first. And we're kind of locked, we're still locked in by that, by the damper rod. Okay, these forks, once you get that bottom bolt out, and I'll show you as we get to that point, but you have to then, once your circlip is out, you have to slide hammer the inner and outer tubes apart from each other. Okay, so I'm going to keep working on that bottom bolt, and bear with me. I'll be back as soon as I can. Okay, well, it just took another 30 seconds of working it. You know, kind of zap it, zap it, zap it, zap it, and it finally broke loose. So that's it. That's our bottom bolt there. Okay, you can see that. That's what our bottom bolt looks like. Now there's supposed to be a washer, a copper washer on the bottom of that. Don't lose it. Okay, make sure it's there. Oop, there we go. Okay, one copper washer for the bottom bolt. Now we're going to stand this guy upright, drain out any remaining fluids. Okay, get to a little drippy end there. And now with the circlip removed out of the top, let's just slide hammer these apart. Boom, there we go. That's it. Okay, so here's our damper rod. That's what the bolt was screwing into in the bottom there. Okay. Yeah, I think somebody Loctited this. Right here, I'm gonna wipe this down. Hopefully we don't get too much oil all over the place. Okay, this part here on the end of the damper rod, that's our, can you see that? That's our bottoming cone. That guy should just come right off of there, but again, I think because somebody used Loctite or something on there, it doesn't want to come off. So let's work at getting that off. I'm going to just kind of gently put our chrome tube in place. I'm going to plug up the end of the chrome tube so we don't get any oil coming out of there. I personally don't like getting oil all over my hands. Normally at this point I'd be wearing rubber gloves, but I ran out. I need to go to Harbor Freight and use one of my coupons and get me some new gloves. So let's see if we can, there we go. There we go. It just had some grime on it, some of that aluminum oxide. Okay, that's our bottoming cone. Don't ever forget to put that back on. That wouldn't be a good thing. So now, I'm trying to keep this all in a spot where you can see it without making a big, huge mess. All right, at this point, let's take the plug out of the top. We can turn the whole thing over. And out comes our damping rod. Oop, there we go, our damping rod. Okay. Now this damping rod, you can see, hopefully you can see, it does have that hex in the top. Okay, can you see that? So I'm going to find out what size that is, and I'm going to make myself a tool so that I don't ever run into this problem again of not being able to get that bottom bolt out. With the proper tool holding this in place, that bottom bolt will zap right out every time. Okay? So we had that. We had our top out spring, okay, going around the damper rod. Now we want to take off our dust seals. Hope you can see this. Here's our dust seal. Okay, dust seal. These are junk. We're going to throw them away. Here comes our main oil seal. Okay. Behind the main oil seal is our washer that the seal sits on. And when I put this back together, I'll explain the proper way so you always know which way that seal goes in, because I've seen that question so many times. People get confused on, well, which way is up with this seal? And I'll show you so you never make that mistake. Okay, here's our guide bushing, DU bushing. It actually looks like it's in not bad shape. And then on the end of the chrome tube, we can take that off this way. That's what's known as an FB bushing. Okay, the Teflon is on the outside. So you have a DU bushing where the Teflon's on the inside. The FB bushing has the Teflon on the outside. And that's it. So our fork is all apart. We'll get everything cleaned up here. And of course I'm going to get the other fork taken apart as well. I'll do that off camera though. I'll do all that off camera, and then we'll come back and I'll show you about putting everything back together. Okay? So let me get to that, and hey, I'll be right back.